kind of fundamental habit of engaging with the contents of our experience. So there's a saying in the sutra that when there is sound, when there is sights, just sights. When there is sound, just sound. When there is taste, just taste. When there is tactile sensations, just tactile sensations, and so forth. So normally, when there's these appearances to the mind, when it's a sight, it's not just a sight, but we add on to it, conceptual elaboration, commenting, chatting, labeling it, determining, oh, this is a good sight, a pleasant form, a nice sound, or an ugly sound. So it's actually the mental commenting that is preventing our peace. So, sometimes, we can't control what's going on outside. We can't really control what's going on inside either. But sometimes when these, noise comes, then like a drawing on the surface of a pond, right? The second that the image is drawn on the surface, it goes away, right? It just goes back into the water, right? So similarly, when these, the parade is coming down the street, there's all this noise, right? It's like to let it be, not engage. Not engage with, you know, if it's a nice song or our favorite song, our wedding song, right? We don't, you know, sing along or, you know, get into the beat, but just leave it. If it's someone we don't like, also then not to have aversion, no pushing away. But just, you know, like the surface of the pond, whatever is drawn on it, right? Someone writes, you know, the letters, you know, good or bad. The surface of the pond, right? It accepts all that. And then in the next moment, it dissolves, right? No cleaning, no trace of it is left in the next moment. So, to have that skill is very useful for our meditation, as well as just for our lives. Because oftentimes, you know, we keep recycling the same garbage over and over, you know, like a track on repeat, just keeps going over and over in our heads. Okay, anyway, but that's not what we're here to talk about primarily today. So, 2 newcomers, and the rest of you, I don't think you've been here for all the Heart Sutra sessions, have you? Sir, yes?
No, I have been to.
You have? Really?
Except one.
Except one.
Yeah.
That must have been the one I was at.
But I have.
Okay. So last time I was here, I gave some homework. Right? Were you here last time? I talked about Heart Sutra? You were?
Yeah.
Okay. So Anita, thanks for volunteering. Please stand up. Stand up.
Stand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and those of you who are smiling, you know, you could be next. Okay? So, what was it? First, remind me, I know, but just remind me what homework I gave last time.
You said that you have to learn you have to memorize the Heart Sutra in any language.
Uh-huh.
And the other one was the definition of Prajnaparamita.
That's for group discussion.
Everyone looking at me like,
Sutras.
Huh?
Prajnaparamita Sutra.
What makes a Prajnaparamita Sutra?
And that's it?
I think so.
Okay. Maybe I should always have as my homework. The first assignment is to remember what is assigned for homework. Avan.
I've memorized how.
No. First things first. What other assignments did I give? Okay, well, I didn't tell you to sit down.
Oh,
Okay. So anyway, the Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in the language of India. Yeah, so go ahead.
well, actually I've got about 5 stanzas. 5
Okay.
stanzas from the bottom, right?
From the bottom, okay. So what do you have it from?
Where do I have it from?
Yeah. I mean, just start what you have.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Huh?
One second. I'm a little overwhelmed by you. I know it.
Yeah,
I'm just a little nervous.
no problem.
Mm.
So do you have,
Just
you
give
know?
me the first word.
Wait, so 5 stanzas.
The Bhagwan thus, the Bhagwan having thus spoken, the Arya, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in the entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras and gandharvas, were greatly overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. And then, one second. I've been practicing every day. So.
Great.
Just
Okay, so first, what you just said, do you think it's 100% correct?
maybe one or two words.
Okay. Which one word?
Maybe greatly. What do you say? Greatly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, good. Right? Then, what should it be?
Highly praised. Highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. And what is
No,
that?
you said something overjoyed.
Ah, the
Yeah,
overjoyed.
greatly overjoyed,
Were
right?
overjoyed.
Just overjoyed.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Good. Okay, and then that's it? Or you have
I
something
know
more?
the others also. So this one.
Okay. So, do you know from Tayata, Gate Gate Para Gate Parasam Gate Bodhisattva? Okay? Then?
And the mantra, some mantra of profound perfection, wisdom is declared. Tayata Om Gate Gate Para Gate Parasam Gate Bodhisattva. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan rose from his concentration. Is that correct?
You're missing something?
Should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that.
Even?
Oh, yeah. Even the Tathagatas. No. Okay. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. Oh, there's something before that.
Okay.
He rose from that concentration and commended the Arya, commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice.
Yeah, you tell me.
Even the Tathagatas rejoice. Then that verse comes, then the
Okay.
word of all that.
Okay. Alright? So, Indrani, oh, you got your book open there. You got your book open there. Looks like you're working diligently. So, do you have something more than that?
I memorized first 3 stanza.
From the beginning?
From the beginning.
Okay. So, please share with us.
Thus did I hear at one time that Bhagavan was dwelling in the mass of vultures peak with great community of monk, and the great community of bodhisattva, and at great community of bodhisattva, and at that time bodhisattva.
Also, right? Also at that time. Huh? Okay? Yeah?
At that time, the Bhagavan.
At that time, okay?
At that time Bhagavan also
Was absorbed.
was absorbed in the concentration, was absorbed in the practice of categories of phenomena called profound illumination, and Bodhisattva through the power of Buddha, Venerable Shariputra.
Okay. Okay. Avan.
I've done it from the start, not from the end, because it makes more sense to me logically.
Great.
So,
Yeah.
thus did I hear at one time that Bhagwan was dwelling on the mass of Lachus mountain in Rajagriha together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagwan was absorbed in the concentration on the category of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also to be empty of inherent wisdom. Then the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice in the activity of profound perfection of wisdom? He said that. And the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said to Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this, correctly and repeatedly, beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors, and consciousness are empty. So far. I'll do the rest.
Okay.
How's that?
Pretty good?
Gold star?
Good start.
Can I sit down?
Yes, or you can sit down. In fact, maybe next time we'll do it the other way. Everyone will stand up, and then when they can recite the whole thing, then they're able to sit down. Right? Okay. I will spare the rest of you. Right? So yeah. See, you don't have to do all of the little tricks and tips I told you, starting from the back and then working your way to the front. But it's good to test yourself, right? Throughout the day, you know? Then just try, right? And Alban, let me ask you, do you know any mistakes you made?
I'm sure there must have been some.
Yeah. But do you know which ones?
No, I was too engaged in reciting it at that point of time.
Okay.
At home, yes, I
Okay.
I know.
So then just become aware of that.
Yes.
Okay? Alright. Anyway. Okay. So that was just a little, you know, sort of like entry pass. Okay? Keeping you guys honest. So anyway, let's begin in earnest now. So welcome everyone. We are engaged in a commentary on the Heart Sutra here, which is one of the modules from the basic program of FPMT. And so those of you who are coming for the first time, have you listened to the lectures online, or you're totally fresh? Okay. So, that's fine.
Question is basic, I know like some preachings which we gave, some
Okay.
devotees are there.
Okay.
Know about how to maintain the peaceful thoughts which are
Mhm.
peaceful,
Okay.
and which would be creating some important controlling areas over our daily routine.
Okay. Great. Okay. So, in any case, what we're doing over the next, it'll probably be 10 sessions, maybe more, maybe less. That depends on you. But we are going through this Heart Sutra, and we are going through a commentary by the great Tibetan master, Tenzin Namjong, called Jewel Light Illuminating the Meaning. So, as we did last time I was here, let us turn to almost at the back of this blue booklet, and there is this, the practice of the Prajnaparamita, the wisdom gone beyond, how to meditate in sessions on the Heart Sutra. So 2 pages till the end. Okay. So the last time I was here, I started to give commentary on these verses here that we recite prior to engaging in the teachings. So this Refuge in Bodhicitta stanza, Shanti Gopinath, who composed it? Huh? Refuge in Bodhicitta stanza. Are you on the same page? Yes? Okay, 2 pages till the end of the book. Yes? How to meditate in sessions on Heart Sutra. Refuge in Bodhicitta. So, who composed that stanza? Sadhana? Lama Tsongkhapa.
The Bodhicitta thing is Shantideva, so is this...
How are you? Okay. Okay. Atisha. Oh, and our clock is back.
Yeah.
Oh, auspicious. Okay. JC as well. Okay, great. Very auspicious. Okay. Alright, well maybe we need to... Okay. So anyway, I won't ask you guys any more questions because I get depressed. Okay, I'm joking. So, anyway, prior to a teaching, there will be certain prayers, stanzas, invocations that we recite. So the point of all of this is not just, to show off how beautiful our voices are, right? Or, some of us, we know these stanzas by heart in Tibetan, right? Rather, everything that we recite is actually like a mini meditation guide. While we recite the words on the page, it should evoke a certain meaning that we remember in our mental continuum, right? And by familiarizing ourselves with the meaning, then that becomes this type of meditation. Okay, so you can sit, how about you sit right here, and take the blue book. JC?
Yeah.
You should have a blue book too, Risha, here. Yes. Okay, you can take that book. Yes, let's sit right there. Okay? So as you recite, then recall the meaning. Okay? So as I mentioned last time, then this stanza talks about refuge, which prevents us from following a wrong path, and bodhicitta, which prevents us from going into a lesser path. So in general, I know you guys are very busy, right? Huh? Too busy for Dharma, right? So, no, don't say that. But if you're too busy to come to class, then these lectures are being recorded. And if you miss a class on a weekend, then please listen to or watch the lecture prior to coming to the next class, because it is cumulative in nature. And so the things that, you know, would have been said in the earlier sessions, then if you come to the later sessions without having done it, or, you know, understood, then, yeah, it makes it more difficult for you and me. Okay? Okay? Alright. So in any case, I gave a quite, I think maybe half an hour, maybe 45 minutes commentary just on this one stanza, because you encountered this stanza many times, right? So, yeah, look into that. Okay, so in any case, let's recite together. I don't want to, you know, go over that again. Okay, so I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. By the virtuous merit I create by practicing giving and other perfections, I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the virtuous merit that I create by practicing giving and other perfections, I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the virtuous merit that I create by practicing giving and other perfections, may I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. So, yeah. Let us now just recite the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, which is on the next page. Okay? So is this translation the standard one in the FMT book?
Yeah, it's the same as in the retreat.
Okay, great. Okay. So now, Aban, you know, for you, like at the beginning, don't look at the book, right? Right. So by the way, you came late, but there's a few homework assignments. One of which is to memorize the Heart Sutra, right? In a language of your choice. Okay? Before you guys came, then 3 people stood up. I asked them to stand up. and I asked them to recite all they knew of the Heart Sutra by memory. Okay? Was that a pleasant experience? Huh?
What?
Was that a pleasant experience?
Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to share that pleasant experience and give you guys, the rest of you, an opportunity to do that in subsequent sessions. Okay? So how pleasant it is for you will depend on maybe how much you've memorized the Heart Sutra. Right? Okay. Alright. So, let's start. Thus today here at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajgiriya, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasava Arya Teshvar looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty and inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasava Arya Teshvar. How should any son of lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasava Arya Teshvar said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of lineage or daughter of lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no eye element and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, find without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of their vow. Upwards who dwell in 3 times, also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata, gate gate paragate parasam gate bodhiswa. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasava, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended Bodhisattva Mahasava Arya saying, well said, son of lineage, like that. It is like that. Once you practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, Bodhisattva Mahasava Arya those running in their entirety along with the world of gods, humans, and souls in front of us, will rejoice and highly praise that spoken by the Bhagavan. I prostrate to the gathering of the keys and the 3 chakras, who abide in the holy yoga of using space, by our powers of clairvoyance and magic combination, to look after practitioners like a learned child. Akashamara Shasana Akasamara. Akasamara Shasabara Samaraya Taita Gadi Paragati Parasangadi Bodhiswa. By the teachings of the 3 supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified, may they be completely pacified. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with Dharma. May there be auspicious and perfect happiness here, right now. please turn now to page 10. So, just to give a kind of brief review about what we've discussed thus far. Yeah. Here, the stanza right there, right? Whatever you have spoken begins from dependent arising and is for the purpose of passing beyond sorrow. You have no activities that do not bring peace. Okay? So why do we engage in study? Why do we engage in meditation? Why do we do anything? Huh? Huh? Yes. We are all looking for some sense of well-being, happiness, you know, and we want to avoid suffering. So, Tsongkhapa also says in this text, the small essence of good explanations is actually the praise of dependent origination, right, which we've discussed here a few times, right? So in that text, he also says that, you know, whatever suffering arises in the world, you know, comes from ignorance, and you have taught this means dependent arising to, you know, overcome that ignorance. Okay. So fundamentally, you know, all the suffering in the world comes not from an outside cause, like, you know, traffic jams, or, you know, people criticizing us, or whatever, you know, illness, but fundamentally is rooted in our own minds, and in particular coming from ignorance. So here, ignorance is the sense of, you know, not just a mere not knowing, but a active exaggeration or an active distortion of the way that ourselves and other phenomena exist. Okay? So, without jumping the gun too much, we impute or exaggerate or, you know, reify, a status of phenomena above and beyond what phenomena actually have. Okay? Let me put it in simple terms, or simpler terms. We all say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? You've heard that? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder means that, you know, even this statement, it's like there's no beauty coming from the side of the object. It all is in the eye of the beholder, means it depends who's looking at it, right? Is this beautiful? Depends who's looking at it, right? Okay? So that actually expresses a very deep truism, right? That is actually what the Buddha is getting at here, right? But although we say that, well, it's very just much at the level of words for us. Because when we look at our actions, then it's not that way for us, for our own reality. Our lips might say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but what happens, you know, when we go out into the world, there is the appearance of beauty from the side of the object, or unattractiveness from the side of the object, and then we cling on to that. We believe in the the appearances as being real. Okay? And then because of that, since we then perceive the beauty being real from the side of the object, we then want to, grasp, own, not give away, right? So the afflictions, like attachment, greed, miserliness, and so forth, arise from that. And then when we perceive, on the other hand, an object that appears unattractive, right, then we have aversion to that object out there. And therefore, the enemy is out there. The unattractiveness is out there. So we wish to, destroy or subdue, punish, do all these things based on, anger, aggression, and so forth. So we'll have time for questions in a bit, okay? Okay? So, this is not then to say that the beauty or the attractiveness or the unattractiveness, right, then don't exist, full stop. But the way they exist and the way they appear are different. And it is this fundamental confusion about the appearance and reality that is the source of all of our sufferings. Okay. Therefore, as I mentioned also many times, as Nagarjuna says in the Mula Majjhimika, enthused by great compassion, you taught the Holy Dharma to overcome all wrong views, to Gautam Buddha I prostrate. Okay? So compassion being the mind that wishes that beings be free from suffering, but the Buddha, having seen that the suffering is fundamentally rooted in this ignorance that holds wrongly to the status of phenomena, then the Buddha taught the Holy Dharma to overcome all wrong views. Okay? Okay? So, since the root of our suffering is this misapprehension or ignorance on the status of phenomena, in order to achieve freedom from that suffering, we need to arrive at the correct view of reality. Okay? By arriving at the correct view of reality, that will, serve as a direct antidote to our ignorance that engages in reality in a wrong way. Yes? Okay. So, that in general is the path to nirvana, liberation. In general. It is to analyze, discover the meaning of reality, how things exist, right? And then, meditate on it to a point where, first, although we get a conceptual understanding, through meditating again and again, that conceptual understanding can become a direct realization, right? So, then that direct realization, as we continue to meditate, it forms an antidote so powerful that it can abandon the ignorance, the grasping to the false sense of self and phenomena, to the point where we can abandon not only the ignorance, but even the seeds or the potential for that ignorance to arise again in our mind streams. Once we've done that, we've achieved nirvana. We no longer have to suffer again. Okay? So, that's the big picture. Well, not the biggest picture, but that's the big picture. Okay? Then, as we said in the beginning stanza, due to my practice of giving in the perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. That's the real biggest picture, right? Means just as we don't want to suffer and want to be happy, all other sentient beings are like that, right? So for us to merely gain liberation for ourselves alone, we're just one person, whereas, limitless is the end of space, thus limitless are sentient beings, thus limitless are karma and afflictions, may my aspirations be limitless as well, right? You know that from the King of Prayers, right? So there in the King of Prayers is saying, the space is limitless. And wherever there's space, there's sentient beings. And wherever there's sentient beings, there's karma and afflictions. Means where any sentient being who is under the influence of karma and afflictions is a being in samsara. Any being in samsara is experiencing suffering, right? So since suffering sentient beings are limitless, Samanta Bhadra in the King of Prayers is saying, may my aspirations be limitless as well. Means, may I then develop that aspiration to attain full enlightenment so that I can liberate all these sentient beings from the oceans of samsaric suffering. Okay? Yes. Okay. Therefore, one has the aspiration to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering, but merely having that aspiration is not good enough, right? Due to my practice of giving and perfections, may I become a Buddha, right? To benefit all sentient beings. So we have that aspiration, may I become a Buddha, but one doesn't just become a Buddha like, I don't know, one wakes up one morning and it's like, oh, I'm Buddha now. One has to train in the causes, right? And the causes are the perfections, the 6 perfections, okay? So, giving is the first, okay? Then we have giving, ethical discipline, patience, enthusiastic effort, meditation, and the 6th is wisdom. Okay? Yes. So, those 6 perfections are the main training that the bodhisattvas undertake in order to achieve enlightenment. Okay? And, so now this sutra, the Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, right, explains the, as we read in the beginning, right, how should a bodhisattva train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? Okay? Right? So, these sutras, right, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, they explain the methods by which bodhisattvas can train in the practices that will lead to full enlightenment. Okay? Alright. So that's the biggest picture. Okay? Yes? So now, we have this stanza. Whatever you have spoken begins from dependent arising and is for the purpose of passing beyond sorrow. You have no activities that do not bring peace. Okay? So, in general, the Buddha, after attaining enlightenment, taught many different sutras. It is said, there's like 84,000 heaps of Dharma teachings. Okay? So then, these sutras all, they say, were designed to lead the disciples in a graduated way to not only liberation but full enlightenment. Okay? So the actual, highest view of reality is very subtle, right? Very profound, very difficult to understand, right? And therefore, all these different teachings were, set out according to the various dispositions of disciples, right? And therefore, these, now when we categorize the different sutras, they're categorized into the so-called 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma, right? Right? You've heard this before? Oh.
No, I haven't.
No, you haven't? Oh.
I thought you were talking about the Pitakas. I'm ignorant, so just ignore me.
Huh. Okay. So, Khor Ling. This place, Khor Ling. Khor is like Dharma chakra, wheel of Dharma, right? Sum, 3. Ling, place. Okay? Sometimes island, they'll say. Okay? So, that's the name of this place, right? Khor Ling. So, all these, the different Buddhist, teachings then can be categorized into these 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma, and that we've explained in some detail. And the other homework I gave you, I thought, wasn't just to define the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, but was to define all 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. Or am I mistaken?
No.
No?
No.
No?
Yes. You did tell us.
No.
Okay, but you can do that,
Yeah.
right? Huh?
Yeah, we can.
Really? Good. So okay, Anita, I like the confidence. So I have a question for you now then, okay? You did admit that the homework was to come up with a definition of what, Perfection of Wisdom Sutra is, right? So what's your definition?
Mine, it fell short actually. But I said that it has to deal with the perfection of wisdom, with emptiness.
Okay, guys. Indrani, okay, you're raising your hand? Okay, what's your definition?
The definition of what I could understand is which defines wisdom and how to go to that, how to reach to that wisdom level through conventionality. Through convention.
Okay, so first things first maybe, right? What does it mean for something to be a definition? Right?
Whatever it is, the definition should be what should refer to the what is defined, and whatever it should either, whatever is the definition should be the defined, whatever is defined should be the definition. There are 8 doors of 8 things it should be.
Huh? 8 doors of 8 things?
Whatever it is, one should be the other. Should be it and only it. That's otherwise.
Okay. Alright, guys.
I think it should be a Prasangika Madhyamika Sutra, right?
Okay. I'm even taking one step back. Okay, I'm talking about what it means for something to be a definition of something else. Okay, so we have a definition and a definindum. Okay, sorry, I didn't even use that word before I started studying Buddhism. Okay, okay. So what my boss was talking about is, in general, what it means for two phenomena to be equivalent. Okay, equivalent, or dunchik in Tibetan. Dunchik literally means, same meaning. Okay, so with any two phenomena, there's so-called 8 doors of pervasion. 8 doors of pervasion that need to take place for them to be equivalent. So if we have phenomena A and B, right, it would be, if something is A, it's necessarily B. If something is B, it's necessarily A. If something is not A, it's necessarily not B. If something is not B, it's necessarily not A. If A exists, B exists. If B exists, then A exists. If A doesn't exist, B doesn't exist. And if B doesn't exist, then A doesn't exist. Okay? Now, that in general doesn't necessarily mean that two things are definition and definindum, if they have those, right? They're just equivalent, right? For example, functioning thing and impermanent phenomena are equivalent, but functioning thing isn't the definition of impermanent phenomena. Okay? Alright. Anyway, you understand? No. Functioning thing is something that's able to perform a function. An impermanent phenomena is something that moment by moment changing, disintegrating. Now, whatever is a functioning thing is an impermanent phenomena, and whatever is an impermanent phenomena is a functioning thing, but functioning thing isn't the definition of impermanent phenomena. Okay. Anyway, I don't want to go into that too much, but I'm just saying, right, why was I talking about this? We're talking about two phenomena being equivalent means they have the 8 doors of pervasion. If something is definition and definindum, they're necessarily equivalent. Which also means, if they're not equivalent, they're not definition and definindum. Okay? But just the fact that they're equivalent doesn't make them definition and definindum. Okay? Why am I bringing this up? Yes?
What you just spoke,
Yeah.
it's part of Buddhist philosophy, or is it just philosophy, or what is it?
Okay. This is just logic. It doesn't have to be Buddhist.
Oh yeah,
right?
it's just
Yeah.
logic and reasoning,
Yeah.
philosophy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But, as good Buddhists, we follow reasoning.
Yeah.
Okay? I actually brought one text, but we're kind of running out of time. But I'm here again tomorrow, so maybe we'll get to it. Okay? Alright? Now, I feel like I'm trying to keep you guys in, but you're like going out. Okay? Why am I bringing all this up? It's because when I ask you guys, okay, first in general, we're studying these extensive texts so that we can gain an understanding that will be critical for us to realize emptiness, so that we can attain liberation and full enlightenment. Okay? So as I said, we need to have a quite high standard for ourselves, for our studies. I mentioned Geshe Lama Zopa, who used to be, well, he's passed away now, but he was the abbot of Kopan Monastery in Nepal for many, many years. And he told Venerable Lexo, the other teacher that comes here, he said, now when you go to Sera and you're studying the text, make sure you understand every word. So do you want to have that as a standard? Yes, good. So then, if you really want to understand these things, you'll need to know, how to define them. So last time I was here, you'd already been in how many sessions? 4 sessions? Huh? And I asked, oh, so what does it mean, a Perfection of Wisdom Sutra? And then I get this like, oh, it talks about emptiness. Okay? Which is true, but that's not the definition of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Right? Because if something merely just talks about emptiness, it's not necessarily a Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Me, for example, I talk about emptiness, right? Am I a Perfection of Wisdom Sutra? No. Right? So
what's spoken by the Bhagavan, like that defined.
So what I'm saying is, definition and definition, they at least have to be equivalent. Okay? Now also, the definition has to be easier to realize than the definindum. Right? We say that the definition of a pot is a, flat bottom, round bellied vessel that is capable of holding water. Okay? That's the definition of a pot. Okay? So you realize that thing, flat bottom, round belly, capable of holding water, and then someone says, hey, that's a pot. Okay, it's a cup, but you get my point, right? Right? First you understand the thing, and then you apply the terminology to it. Right? So that thing has to be easier to realize than the term. Okay? But we're not talking about that. That's enough for now. What I'm saying is then when I say come up with a definition for the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, you need to at least have something that's equivalent. So then if you say, oh yeah, Indrani, what did you say? Oh, it talks about emptiness and it shows you how to realize emptiness. Huh? Through conventional reality. Okay? So what do you guys think? No. So Barn, what do you have?
That's what I think I remember, that it ought to be a Prasangika Madhyamika Sutra. One of the component parts of the definition. And it has to be spoken by the Buddha. Or it has to be blessed by the Buddha for somebody else to have spoken about. Is that right?
Okay. Okay.
That's not right?
Okay. Anyway, we have in the previous sessions up to this point, we're now on page 11, right? The meaning of the text. Okay. So, we tried to define Prajnaparamita Sutra. Then at the end of this, I think Lexok went over this last time, he was just talking about what Prajnaparamita is, the perfection of wisdom. Dare I ask, Shanti, what is the definition of the perfection of wisdom?
It's the direct realization of emptiness in the mind of Bodhisattva. Except, yeah, mind of a Bodhisattva or Buddha.
The mind directly realizing emptiness in the mind of a Bodhisattva or Buddha. What do you guys think? Huh?
It's correct.
Yeah, maybe I'm a little off, but I think
Actually, Venerable Lectures
Wisdom of
included
emptiness.
Arya, Hina and Aryas, but I don't think that is the case.
Why not?
Because then it won't be a Mahayana. Perfection of wisdom, I think, is in the 6 paramitas, and we always talk about the perfections with the conjoined with conventional bodhicitta.
Okay. So I can just tell by other people's faces, even the other experienced students, that this is not. Did Lexo talk about this last time?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said there are 4 ways of defining perfection of wisdom.
Okay.
One is basis,
Mm.
which is the content, emptiness of self and phenomena.
Okay.
So that concept itself becomes perfection of wisdom.
Okay.
And then second one is the path. So anyone who is set out on a path on a, based on this basis and on a path to attaining Buddhahood,
Right.
so that path can be defined as perfection of wisdom.
Okay.
And the second and third one is the resultant, which is ultimately the mind of someone who has realized that concept.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And the fourth one is the textual, any text which contains this concept or defines this concept in. So that's the 4 way of defining perfection of wisdom.
Okay. So we'll be a bit precise. Okay, so not bad. But remember, what were we just talking about with definition? Okay. So is the scriptural perfection of wisdom the perfection of wisdom?
No.
Okay. So here, there's other terminology. We say, when it is terminologically divided, there are 4. Okay? But the first one, the natural perfection of wisdom, means emptiness, is not the perfection of wisdom. Right? The scriptural perfection of wisdom is not the perfection of wisdom.
resultant.
Huh?
Resultant one.
The resultant one is, the path one is, according to Prasangika. Then the question comes up, right, is a direct realization of emptiness the perfection of wisdom? Does it have to be in a Mahayana practitioner, a Bodhisattva or a Buddha? Leksok said it can be in the, he said explicitly it could be in a Hinayana, Arya.
But that's what I understood. He included the arhats.
Huh.
Arhat on the path, on the learner path, can be the Hinayana path. He did say, any learner path.
Interesting. So, yeah. Okay, anyway, that is all, up until now, by the way, is like review, right? So, yeah. Okay. So now let's just start on page 11. Okay? So, we have now the meaning of the text. Then there's the discussion of the meaning of the text is in two parts. A discussion of the prologue that produces the sutra and the discussion of the actual sutra produced from that. So, by the way, to know these outlines would be very good, very helpful for your understanding of the sutra. Okay? So point one, a discussion of the prologue that produces the sutra. With respect to the first, the common prologue is from "Thus did I hear at one time" to "Great Assembly of Bodhisattvas." Okay? So, alright. At the beginning of this class, we recited the whole sutra. So now, when in the commentary, it's going to just say from here to here. Okay? So, then, by having memorized it, you would then know, if I then were to say, let's say at another class, okay, Indrani, put away your phone and recite the common prologue. Right? Huh? Yeah. I was saying it's good to then memorize the the outlines of this, right? And then you can know where the different parts of the sutra fit. Okay? So when they say the common prologue is from "Thus did I hear at one time" to "A great assembly of bodhisattvas," when you have the whole sutra memorized, you would know then what is in those brackets, right? So then, very soon, if I were to say, okay, recite the common prologue, right? You would then be able to do it, right? The purpose of the prologue is to have listeners understand that the compiler listened without adding anything or subtracting anything, so that they can pay careful attention to him. According to the master Haribhadra, at one time means that by the blessings of Buddha, all the words of the sutra were heard by Ananda in one instant. He says in his Abhisamaya Abhisamayalam Karaloka, because in air consciousness to which the entire meaning of the sutra arose in one instant. The Master Bhaviveka asserts that because the perfection of wisdom sutras are not within the sphere of Shravakas, their compiler is Vajrapani. Haribhadra asserts that although Ananda was not capable of doing so himself, he compiled the sutras through the blessings of Buddha and therefore is the compiler of the perfection of wisdom sutras. Although such things should be explained, an explanation would be too lengthy. Okay. So now, what I'm hoping to do as my job, right, is to then go through this commentary, jewel light of the meaning, and help to unlock some of those things, right? Okay. So, here, what is this debate that's coming up? You know? Thus did I hear at one time. Okay. So, who is the I?
Ananda Vajrapani.
Ananda? Okay. So now we have these two masters, Haribhadra, okay, who's one of the great Nalanda Pandits, 17 Nalanda Pandits, also Bhaviveka, okay? They have different opinion on this, okay? Haribhadra says it was Ananda, and Bhaviveka says it was Vajrapani, okay? So now, did you guys go through the different speech of the Buddha, different types of speech of the Buddha?
No.
No. Okay. So, someone then was saying earlier when we were talking about what it means to be a sutra, they were saying it has to be spoken by the Buddha, right? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, thus the words, thus did I hear at one time. Is that spoken by the Buddha?
No.
No. So, are these words, thus did I hear at one time? Thus did I hear at one time. Wait. The words, thus did I hear at one time, is it part of the Heart Sutra or not?
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
So those are words, those words are spoken by the Buddha?
The Buddha had asked for those words to be
By Ananda.
Okay. But weren't we saying if something is a sutra, it necessarily has to be spoken by the Buddha?
Oh, I see. That
No, it can be blessed by him.
way. Or spoken through his
This one is also
blessing or...
spoken by Avalokiteshvara.
Yeah, they're different things.
There are different things. Yes, there are different
Through
things.
the power of...
Okay, so yes. So now, this is what we have to say. So now, in terms of the Buddha's speech, there are 3 types. By the way, I don't see many notebooks out there. So this might be something you write down in a notebook. Okay? The 3 types of the Buddha's speech is the one that directly comes from the Buddha's mouth, right? Okay. Then we have the Chingilakika, like speech by blessing. Later we see, then through the power of the Buddha, right? The Venerable Shariputra said to the Bodhisattva Mahasava Avalokiteshvara, how should the son of lineage train, right? Okay? So, how should a son of lineage train who wishes to practice the profound perfection of profound practice the perfection of wisdom? Okay? That, who spoke it?
Supreme emanation body.
How should a son of the lineage train
Shariputra.
Shariputra? Okay? So those words came out of Shariputra's mouth, right? Okay. But that is the speech of the Buddha. Okay? Because at the beginning it says, then through the power of the Buddha. Okay? So they're inspired by the Buddha. So we then say, no, this is still sutra. Okay? Because the kind of composer or author, the author of it has to be a supreme emanation Buddha. Means in our time, Buddha Shakyamuni. Okay? So since it was through the power of the Buddha that those words were spoken, the Buddha was the author of those words, even though they came out of Shariputra's mouth. Okay? Then we have Jesu Nanwe Ka. Jesu means later. Nanwa is permission. So like subsequent permission, speech. Okay? So later, then the Buddha, he said, okay, Ananda, now when you compile these sutras, please add in the relevant details about the place, who is there, the kind of in between the lines, right? So all this other stuff, he spoke thus, and then this happened, all the kind of, transitions, right? Because the Buddha then said, fill those in after, right? Also, we consider to be the Buddha's speech. Okay? So how many types of Buddha's speech are there? 3. Words directly spoken, the words by blessing, and the words through subsequent permission. Okay? So now, you should be able to, as you go through the sutra, be able to identify, which is which. Okay? So, thus did I hear at one time. All that is what type of speech? The common prologue is what type of speech? Subsequent permission. Okay. Alright. So now, good. This, then, who is the I? Who is the compiler of this sutra? Now we have Haribhadra and Bhaviveka who are arguing about this. Okay? But first, it's a bit interesting. Haribhadra says at one time means that by the blessings of the Buddha, all the words of the sutra were heard by Ananda in one instant. Okay? So, was Ananda present when this was going on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, how can you say that that's very good?
Hmm.
Later on it says it was 10 months old or something.
Okay. So, when were the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras taught in the Buddhist life?
3 different ages.
Huh?
1 year after you reach enlightenment.
1 year after you reach enlightenment. That's what they say, right?
And 1 year before he passed on. And
That's a
at the age
different
of
opinion. Generally, modern day opinion is 1 day after.
1 year.
1 year after.
1 year after. Okay? So, Ananda was Buddha's cousin, right? Or a relative, cousin, right? Who was, a lot younger than Buddha. So then this doubt comes up, well, was he already, the Buddha, remember, he had the other attendant, Lekpe Karma, something like this, right? His name in Tibetan, who couldn't see any qualities of the Buddha, right? The Ananda was Buddha's attendant, but he wasn't Buddha's first attendant, right? So for like 25 years, he had another attendant. Yeah, something like this, okay? So if it's just 1 year after the Buddha was enlightened, you're taking notes on a phone. Okay. So if it was just 1 year after the Buddha was enlightened, then this doubt comes, how could it be Ananda? Okay? So that's one thing. Second thing, let's just say, yeah, it is Ananda, but all of those words were then heard in one instant. Huh?
It could happen by his Buddha's blessing power. That
Could. Okay. So which instant? Huh? Means, okay. So when it says he heard, right? He heard. That means like in one instant, he hears both the question, the answer, all the words. It's just like one sound, right? But he understands all the meaning.
He's not yet arhat. He's not an intended disciple.
he's not at that level, right? To understand everything straight away.
So here, Haribhadra says, because an ear consciousness to which the entire meaning of the sutra arose in one instant.
It's possible, but then all the other bodhisattvas also must have heard it instantly.
Why?
That's what Ananda, that's what's written there. There was a great community of monks and bodhisattvas.
Okay, anyway, these are things to think about. They go above and beyond what is really germane to us right now. Okay? So now, we have Haribhadra saying that they were heard by Ananda. We have Bhaviveka who says that because the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras are not within the sphere of Shravakas, their compiler is Vajrapani. Who's Vajrapani?
Bodhisattva power.
Vajrapani is a bodhisattva. Well, actually, Vajrapani is another Buddha. But he appeared in the aspect of a bodhisattva, one of the Buddha's direct disciples. Okay? So now, Bhaviveka is saying the perfection of wisdom sutras are not within the sphere of Shravakas. What does that mean?
Hinayana practitioners.
Yeah,
No. What does it mean that they're not within the sphere of Shravakas?
The intended disciples are Mahayana practitioners.
their level is lower.
Okay. So Shanti says that not within the sphere of Shravakas means the Shravakas aren't the intended disciples of these sutras. Okay?
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that?
Yeah.
So now, if the Shravakas aren't the intended disciples of the sutras, why does that then mean that, Ananda can't compile the sutra?
He can, but he wasn't there. That's what they say. He can, according to me. Even Shariputra
Hold on.
is not supposed to be here.
I'm talking about Bhaviveka. Okay? Bhaviveka asserts that because the perfection of wisdom sutras are not within the sphere of Shravakas, their compiler is Vajrapani, is not Ananda. Right?
Yeah, but Ananda could have memorized it without truly understanding it.
Yes, I agree with you, but Bhaviveka is saying that because the perfection of wisdom sutras are not within the sphere of Shravakas, their compiler is Vajrapani, it's not Ananda. Right? So in order to compile the sutra, one has to have understood all the meaning. Yes. Yes, Ananda was a Shravaka, means hearer. Huh? Yeah? See, it's clear in the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Okay, well, during the Buddha's lifetime, Ananda wasn't even an arhat. Okay, he became an arhat, means he attained nirvana after the Buddha had manifested, passing away to parinirvana. Okay, so now, even though next line, right, Haribhadra asserts that Ananda was not capable of doing so himself, he compiled the sutras through the blessings of the Buddha, and therefore is the compiler of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So what does it mean to compile the sutra?
Record it.
Yeah.
Write it down.
Okay. So if that's the case, right, I mean, you guys all, hopefully within, very soon, you'll have this memorized, right? Right? Nice. But, though you have it memorized, do you need to understand all the profound meaning? No. No, right? So now we have this debate between Haribhadra and Bhaviveka saying, one of them is saying, okay, Ananda did it. Then Bhaviveka says, no, he couldn't do it because he's a Shravaka. And then Haribhadra's response is, but wait a minute, he couldn't do it himself, but through the power of the Buddha, he was able to do it. But what was he able to do? Just be able to know all those words down? That's not particularly something that profound, right? Huh?
You need to understand it.
Compiling it just means writing it down.
I mean, okay, so just so you guys know, right, in the... Ananda did have a very prodigious memory, right? And since he was the attendant of the Buddha, you know, he traveled with the Buddha always, you know, once he became the attendant, and was present at all of the, you know, lectures, all of the sutras. Then because of his memory, he could recite, right, thus did I hear at one time, and then, you know, he could explain what happened, you know, and give an accurate depiction of all of the things that were said, right? Okay? But, isn't that just he had a really good memory? Huh?
It's the blessings of, it's not about memory. You can memorize, but it's through the blessings of Buddha, he spoke those words or he compiled for the first time. So we are like, once it is compiled, others can memorize. So that's why.
Okay, so when did Ananda say, "Thus did I hear at one time"? If it is Ananda. So it was after the Buddha passed away, right?
Yeah, these are compiled after the Buddha.
Yeah. Then there was the council of arhats, and this was the thing, right? At that time, Ananda, you know, wasn't yet an arhat. So there was going to be the first council, and he wouldn't be invited. He wouldn't be allowed there because only arhats could go. But the very night before that was supposed to happen, he attained arhatship, doing walking meditation, it says, right? Okay.
You just said he wasn't allowed to attend that meeting of the
Yeah.
arahats because he was not an arahat. Who gets to decide who is an arahat?
Do you know what makes someone an arhat? What does arhat mean?
That.
Huh?
Sorry?
What is the definition of arhat? Maybe that's the first thing, right?
I don't know.
Okay, so that's the first question. Okay, so arhat means, right? It's sometimes translated as foe destroyer. Foe is the afflictive emotions, right? Yeah. So someone who has destroyed the foes means someone who's attained liberation, someone who's attained nirvana. Okay, that means someone who's abandoned the klesha, or the afflictive emotions. Okay, so it's not that like you getting a promotion at work where your boss says, okay, now you're executive vice president. It's not like that. It is a realization in your mental continuum, right? And someone with a level of clairvoyance, an arhat with a level of clairvoyance can see into your continuum that you have also got that level of realization, right? It's not like, it's not a promotion. He attained a level of realization, okay? All right. So, here, Bhaviveka and Haribhadra, what tenet system are they following?
Pravika Swayam Swatantrika Madhyamika.
And Haribhadra?
He also follows.
Svachantika Majjhimika. They're both Svachantika Majjhimika. Okay? So in the Svachantika Majjhimika system, in order to attain liberation, one does not have to realize emptiness. One does not have to realize emptiness. Okay? They realize a more gross selflessness of the person, which means a lack of a self-sufficient, substantially existent self. Okay? But for them, emptiness still is the lack of true existence, Sachanjika Majjhimika. I'm not seeing hands moving as much as they probably should.
Lack of a self-sufficient
Substantially existent self. Okay? For them, emptiness is the lack of true existence. That is, by the way, the same words that Prasangika Majjhimikas say. Prasangika Majjhimikas would also say that, the lack of true existence is emptiness. Okay? But what's the difference? For Prasangika Majjhimika, in order to attain mere liberation, much less full enlightenment, one needs to realize the lack of true existence. One needs to realize emptiness. Sachanjika Majjhimika, it's not necessary. You only need to realize a grosser lack of the self-sufficient, substantially existent self. Okay? So now, here, although Shanti said something different, I would think that, Master Bhaviveka asserts that because the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras are not within the sphere of Shravakas, means perfection of wisdom, meaning the meaning of emptiness, is not necessarily realized by Shravakas. Okay? So it seems that both, Haribhadra and Bhaviveka would agree that Ananda, at this point, didn't realize emptiness. Right? And therefore they both kind of, it seems that they both think that, if he were to compile the sutras on his own, he would need to have understood the meaning. Haribhadra says, okay, he was not capable of understanding the meaning by himself, but through the blessings of Buddha, he was able to compile. Okay? Yeah. Although such things should be explained, an explanation would be too lengthy. There are other considerations here, right? There's this book, Elaborations on Emptiness by Donald Lopez, that devotes a whole chapter on this, who heard the Heart Sutra. Very interesting. In that, he also goes into the considerations of establishing the authenticity of the Mahayana Sutras, which I think Venerable Lexel did with you guys. Right? Okay, I'm not going to ask about it. But you see, in brief, okay, we have the Pali Canon, right? The Pali Canon was compiled by Ananda. No debate on that point, okay? So now, those, the majority of the people following the Pali Canon do not accept that the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras were spoken by the Buddha, right? So then there's a couple ways that the people who accept the validity of the Mahayana Sutras, how they respond. One is, well, these sutras were not given, widely in public, but were given to a select audience. Okay? Only to the very, creme de la creme of disciples. So, no problem. Ananda, you don't see these Perfection of Wisdom Sutras in the Pali Canon. Ananda wasn't there. They weren't compiled by Ananda. Vajrapani, this Bodhisattva disciple of Buddha, he compiled it. It was just for the select audience of the Buddha's Bodhisattva disciples. That's why you guys don't see it in the Pali Canon. So, the mere fact that you don't see it in the Pali Canon is not sufficient to undermine its validity. Because, actually, Ananda wasn't present at all of the sutras. Okay? That's one way of doing it. Okay? Haribhadra's move, saying no, no, no.
There's a battery there on the table.
I see it. Haribhadra's move, right, says, no, Ananda was there, no problem, okay? So, just as you guys accept the validity of the other sutras that Ananda compiled this one too, okay? Now, actually in that council of the 500 Arhats, and even subsequent to that, even within the so-called Pali Canon, there were various things that were put up as being, sutras that were then subject to debate. Okay, and even within those that were at that very first council put up as sutras, there was disagreement among what was actually taught by Buddha and not. Okay? So the other factor was, okay, well, you guys, even in the so-called Pali Canon, you guys don't agree what was and what wasn't spoken by Buddha. So the mere fact that then, that there's disagreement about it, also is not sufficient to invalidate the sutra. Right? So then, to cut to the chase, right? The overwhelming sort of proof then is, well, is this in accord with reality or not? Right? It's not, this was spoken by Buddha, therefore it's valid. It is, this is valid, therefore it was spoken by Buddha. You understand? Okay? Anyway, yeah. Okay. The reason for saying, I'm moving on in the text. The reason for saying both Rajgriha and Vulture's Peak is for the sake of indicating the combination of the two places for laymen and those who have gone forth from the world, with the former being best among places in the afflicted class, and the latter being the best of places among the pure class. Okay. Raja Griha. Okay? Raja, Yes. So Griha, it's like Gar, right? In Hindi now, right? It's the house of the king. Okay? So, the king, Ibn Sara? Yeah?
Ibn Sara.
Okay. So, where he had been living before, there were these fires that broke out. Okay? And therefore, because there were some people who were misbehaving. So he said, okay, whoever's house goes on fire next has to leave town. Okay? Then, as it turned out, his house caught on fire next, so he left. He had to leave. He had to follow his own declaration. And he moved to the place that then was named Raja Griha, the house of the king. Okay? So then close by, right? If you've been there, right? There's the city and then the peak, right? The mountain. Okay. So those two places very close, but the monks lived on the Vulture's Peak, and then the king and the subjects lived in the city. Okay. So best among places in the afflicted class. Afflicted class is what? In general, when we look in the Four Noble Truths, the first two truths belong to the class of the afflicted class, and the second two is among the pure. Okay? But as a kind of proxy for that, lay people are, kind of labeled in the afflicted class, and the monks, the Sangha is the pure class. Okay? With regard to Rajgriha, wow, okay. Oh. The residence of the king. There is a famous palace, or place, in the city of Kushinagara that became uninhabitable due to be repeatedly burned down by non-humans. The king ordered henceforth that those whose homes were burned must build their home in the charnel ground of Sitavana and remain there. At that time, by the power of karma, the king's palace was the first to be lost in the fire. The king went there and made it his abode. That is how it got the name Residence of the King. This is explained in the Heart Sutra. Okay. Regarding monk, the actuality of monkhood can be attained in any of the 10 ways of receiving ordination. In this context, it refers to an arhat, as Shantideva says in Bodhisattva Charyavatara. Okay. So now here, again, it's very important. You think I'm just asking you to memorize it for for fun? No, right? So, regarding monk, so what does that mean?
Arhats.
Together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. It's in parentheses. So those things in the parentheses are words from the sutra. So then when you see that, you'll say, okay, regarding monk, okay, where does it say monk in the sutra? Together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. Right? The Bhagavad Gita was just speaking Rajgriha, Yeah? So then, here, with a great community of monks, it refers to a community of arhats. And, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Nishita.
With an N?
Yes.
Nishita. Okay. So what's the definition of an arhat? I said this 3 minutes ago, right? Okay. Yes?
Destroyer of all
What is this?
all four.
Okay. The literal translation is foe destroyer. So what is a foe?
I don't know.
Okay. Afflictive emotions. So good. I don't know sometimes is the best answer. Okay? Alright. So, foe, destroyer. Foe is the afflictive emotions. Okay? Alright. An arhat is someone who's attained nirvana in general. What is nirvana? But the abandonment of samsara. Right? What is samsara? The process of rebirth, uncontrolled rebirth due to karma and afflictions. Afflictions, afflictive emotions, klesha. Okay? So to abandon samsara, you have to abandon the causes. Of the two causes, karma and affliction, afflictions is the primary one. So the foe destroyer attains nirvana through the abandonment of the afflictions. Okay. Alright. Now this is a bit strange. So in this context it refers to an arhat. As Shantideva says in Bodhisattva Charyavatara, monkhood is the root of the teaching, but even monkhood is difficult. I don't like that translation. So, now, how many of you, last time Geshe Doji Damru was here, yeah? You attend the thing, the 9th chapter? Yeah? How many have done that? Wow, most of you. Okay, now, so look, you guys know Roman numerals, right? So Bodhisattva Charyavatara, IX. Huh, what chapter is that coming from?
9.
Huh?
9.
9. So all of you raised your hands, you got a full commentary on the 9th chapter of Bodhisattva Charyavatara, right? Yes? Were you there? Okay, so what is the context when this is coming up?
I think it has to do with
Okay, boss, I was talking to Aban. No? Anyone? No? Okay, boss.
has to do with refuting the Chitta Matra view. He's talking about the Mahayana Sutras as their authentic teachings. He's giving the thing that Arhats has to attain, get the correct view of emptiness.
Okay.
In order to attain liberation.
Now we're talking.
So
Good.
they're explaining. So first he says by scripture, then the Hinayana people say that no, yours Mahayana scripture says, but we don't say it. So he's defending that somewhere there.
So how does this fit into it? Monkhood is the root of the teaching, but even monkhood is difficult. Okay, so now, here's my other question for you guys. So you guys, as I mentioned last time, I pleaded with you guys, I said, look guys, in other places where this basic program is being taught, you have classes 4 times a week, okay? Maximum, when Lexok and I are both in the country, you guys get us 4 days a month, right? So I did this, I pleaded, begged. So that means you guys have to put in effort and read the commentaries, right? And not just this one, there's many others, right? Okay? Right? Remember when I said that? Okay. So now when you then read this and you saw Bodhisattva Charyavatara, 9th chapter, and hey, you know what that means? 45 AB, that means what? Guess what that means? Stanza 45. There's 4 lines in a stanza. A, B is the first 2 lines. So how many of you then went to your handy Bodhisattva Charyavatara copy and then looked, okay, what is that stanza 45 saying? And let me read for like stanzas 40 through maybe 50 and really get the context. Huh? Anyone? You think that'd be a good idea? I do. Alright? Alright. Yes? Okay. So that one, very easy. Right? Now, these other ones like Chandakirti's 70 stanzas on refuge. Okay? I'm not going to be grilling you guys on that because I don't think you guys have had much experience with that text. But this one, you got taught last month. A whole weekend retreat, right? Is it unfair of me to expect that you guys would know something about it? Is it unfair? Is that fair? Okay. So here's the context. Remember, what was I saying before about the Svatanjika Majjhimika? They assert that for someone to attain arhatship, one doesn't need to realize emptiness. Right? Okay. So okay, by the way, Bodhisattva Charyavatara was composed by whom? Shantideva. Shantideva is what kind of tenet holder?
Prasangika Madhyamika.
Prasangika Majjhimika, right. So in this 9th chapter, at the beginning, there's one stanza, maybe like stanza 40, something like that. He expresses a doubt that is brought up by the lower schools. They say, hey, I'm paraphrasing, you know, the realization of emptiness is not needed to attain nirvana. So why make all the effort? Okay? Then his response is, well, no. It is said even in sutra that only this path, you know, this path means the realization of emptiness, is needed for any type of liberation. Okay? But what is that sutra that says it? Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, which is a Mahayana Sutra. Okay? So now, what makes something a Mahayana Sutra? Oh, I won't ask. I'll spoon feed you. What makes something a Mahayana Sutra is if the intended disciples includes Mahayana practitioners. Who is a Mahayana practitioner? Someone who has developed the mind of bodhicitta. What is bodhicitta? The wish to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay? So, if the intended disciple of that particular sutra includes people of the Mahayana lineage, it's a Mahayana Sutra. Okay? So we have Mahayana, 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 Mahayana. We hear that word, right? It comes up in different contexts. Mahayana Sutra, I just defined. Mahayana practitioner, I've just defined. Mahayana tenet holder, we talked about this over pizza last week. Mahayana tenet holder is who? But what is common with them? Why are they Mahayana
They
tenet holders?
assert the selflessness of phenomena along with the selflessness of person.
But is that the definition? No. A Mahayana tenet holder is a Buddhist, a holder of Buddhist tenets who accepts both the selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomena. I don't see those pens moving. Okay? So now we got it. Mahayana tenet holder, Mahayana Sutra, Mahayana practitioner. Okay? Alright. So now, after, remember, why was I talking about this? Shantideva, he first brings up this doubt that the lower tenet systems say, hey, now in this wisdom chapter, Shantideva is going to talk about emptiness, and the doubt is, hey, why are you talking about emptiness? It's so confusing. And we don't need to attain, we don't need to realize emptiness to attain liberation, so don't confuse me. Just, what's the point? So, Shantideva responds, no, actually, according to Sutra, you need to realize emptiness even to attain mere liberation for yourself alone. And then the response is, wait a minute, which sutra? It's the Prajnaparamita Sutra, it's the Mahayana Sutra. Oh, well that's not even a sutra, that's not spoken by Buddha. So then there's this interlude, which, you know, Shanti brought up, but then for a few stanzas, Shantideva establishes the validity of the Mahayana Sutras. Yeah? Then after that, comes this. Right? Monkhood is the root of the teaching, but even monkhood is difficult. Don't like that at all. Okay? This translation. What it's talking about is, okay, these, remember, Vajrapani, we were saying, oh, one of the bodhisattva, direct disciples of Buddha was a bodhisattva. They talk about the 8 close disciples of Buddha who were bodhisattvas, right? But how many Shravaka disciples did Buddha have? Thousands.
Even the follower, you mentioned Mahakashyapa.
Huh?
Shantideva says Mahakashyapa was the heir to the Buddha.
Yes, okay.
He was also Shravaka.
Okay. Listen. So the root of the teachings was, you know, these Arhat disciples of Buddha. Okay? Mahakashyapa, Shariputra, Moggallana, and so forth. Right? Okay. So now Shantideva is saying, hey, you say they're the root of the teachings, but you say they also haven't realized emptiness. Therefore, to assert that they would then be the root of the teachings, although they haven't realized emptiness, therefore they haven't even become arhats, so then to assert that they're the root of the teachings would be difficult. It's not monkhood is difficult. It's that you who assert that one, one doesn't have to become one doesn't have to realize emptiness to become an arhat, right? That means they haven't realized emptiness. Then, by the way, they're not even arhats if they haven't realized emptiness. So how can they be then the root of the teachings? They're not even arhats. It's a kind of a using the opponent's own assertions against them. Okay. Time is up. So anyway, maybe just to... Well, you guys should know by now, okay? Well, you guys should know by now. Anyway, let's go. Okay, let me just open it up for questions. Any questions regarding the words that came out of my mouth tonight? Yes. Yeah.
They took a given an interesting explanation last.
Okay, but you need to speak louder.
Yeah, about, you said that this is a genuine word. There was a doubt whether this was the genuine word of the Buddha, the Heart Sutra.
Yeah.
Because it was composed in Sanskrit rather than Pali.
Mm.
There were the doubters. And he said that, his take on the two things. One, he said that and all have the Buddha nature and the potential to Buddhahood. And this shows the path to enlightenment. And the second, he said that...
Sorry, who's he?
The people who said that this is a genuine, said by the genuine word of the Buddha. So they gave these two reasonings.
Okay, sorry. Now, I'm on the same page as you. So now what?
So he says that since it shows the path to Buddhahood and enlightenment, it is the word of the Buddha to the doubters. And the second, he says, Nagarjuna, who came quite soon after Buddha and was very skeptical, accepted it. So we should also accept it. Gave these two reasons.
Okay.
And he covered it. Because of this doubt not being composed in Pali and Sanskrit and the doubters,
Yeah.
gave these two reasonings to counter it.
Okay. I asked, are there any questions regarding what I just said? Yes, I mean, sorry, I have to work on. I'm a little bit frustrated, but this was covered already. That's what I was saying, right? This was in the review. Covered already means, you guys should know all this already, right? So today I just touched on a few points, but that should be review for all of you, right? Okay? So, we've gone over all the reasonings. I think Lexo did, right? You have the reasonings in the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara. You have the reasonings in the Ratnavali. You have the reasonings in Bhaviveka's Togebarwa, right? The Blaze of Reasoning, right? Right? So then, it should be like there, tight. Right? Yes or no? Okay. So are there any questions? Yes?
So, historically, how was the compilation done? Like, was it written down somewhere or was it by word of mouth? Like, was it memorized?
Yeah. So, obviously at some time they were written down. Because we have them written down now. Many of the current scholars say for many centuries it was just oral, right? Then, they say, these are modern scholars, okay? Modern scholars talk like this. They say because you see the various repetition, right? Mnemonic devices, things made into stanzas, then it shows that they were an oral tradition exclusively for centuries, and then put down on paper. Then even some scholars say there is a certain point when you start then seeing, like for example, in the Sangata Sutra, in the Lotus Sutra, in later Mahayana Sutras where it says, anyone who writes out the sutra, right? Right? Anyone who writes a mere stanza of the sutra will, collect as much merit as, filling the great 1,010 billion world systems of this many of the 7 kinds of jewels and so forth, right? So modern scholars then would say these were kind of new creations after the practice of writing became more widespread, right? Isn't it the case, you guys tell me, that for, there's this thought that the Vedas should not be written down, right? In ancient times, it was all oral, right? Hello? I read that in something, It was all oral. There was this kind of, it shouldn't be written down. And even in ancient Greece, Socrates was saying, once you guys start writing down things, it'll lead to total degeneration. Because then these words are gonna, then get into the hands of people who won't understand them, won't understand the context, right? So, quite ancient history, writing was very, how do you say, rare, not widespread. In the Vinaya, there was talk of putting things like writing stuff. It would be like letters, and there was also mention of like a wanted poster, right? But no talk of the teachings being written down. At the monk's confession ceremony, the Pratimoksha Sutra was recited, and it had to be recited by memory. Okay? So it does seem historically that it was, an oral tradition for many years, later put down to writing. Then some say, well then, this Heart Sutra, for example, you only see, like now the modern scholars are saying, due to carbon dating, the manuscripts, they're from 8th century AD. That's the earliest one we see of the Heart Sutra. We see other Prajnaparamita Sutras earlier than that, right? But the Heart Sutra, later. Then some say, oh, well that means it was made up in the 8th century. After, centuries after Buddha passed away. Therefore, it's not the word of Buddha. Does that answer your question?
So I have another thing. Sutras are only spoken by Buddha. are there sutras spoken by some of the later
The later what?
the later
Masters.
masters?
Yeah. Okay. So that's what we say. For something to be a sutra, has to be spoken not only by a Buddha, but a Supreme Emanation Buddha, who in our time was Shakyamuni Buddha. Right? So, we hold, for example, Nagarjuna to be a Buddha, but his writings are not sutras. We call them, shastras, commentaries, right? So in the Sanskrit, in the canon, which we now have, there's the Kangyur, right? Ka is like the word of Buddha, and Tengyur, Tenchu, Shastra, right? So the 108 volumes of sutras, all composed by Buddha. But as we saw, this how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom, spoken by Shariputra, composed by Buddha, therefore it's a sutra, right? We went into all that. So the author of the sutras is the Buddha. Then later, masters, although they might be Buddhas, their compositions are not sutras. Why not?
They're not Supreme Emanation Buddha.
Okay, good. They're not Supreme Emanation Buddhas. Why not?
They don't say that they have attained Buddhahood. They don't have the signs, all the signs.
Okay, that's for another day.
They have to show the 12 deeds, then only they're Supreme.
Huh?
Anyway,
So when the Buddha showed the deed of being enlightened in Bodh Gaya, was he a Supreme Emanation body?
yeah.
He wasn't, because he didn't show the 12 deeds.
Oh. Marks and signs.
Okay. Alright guys. Okay, let's end it now, I guess. So, due to the merit that we've created our time here together, may all sending beings pass into space, be freed of all their suffering, and quickly attain the state of enlightenment. May the precious mind of bodhicitta arise in our hearts and in the hearts of all sending beings without even a second's delay. May the altruistic wishes desire be generated increase. Then, due to these merits, may all the glorious Guru's lives be long and stable, particularly His Holiness Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And may all of their holy wishes be accomplished immediately. And then due to the merit which exists as a mere imputation of the mind, may the I, who is merely imputed by the mind, quickly attain the state of Buddhahood, who is merely imputed by the mind, and thus may I lead all sentient beings who are merely imputed by the mind to that state as quickly as possible and by myself alone.